Rockets and Knicks were in Game 5 when O.J. started that fateful drive. His four-way hazard lights were blinking, and no one knew what the Jews was thinking.
I've been to Reno, Chicago, Fargo, Minnesota, Buffalo, Toronto, Winslow, Sarasota, Wichita, Tulsa, Ottawa, Oklahoma, Tampa, Panama, Mattawa, La Paloma, Bangor, Baltimore, Salvador, Amarillo, Tocopilla, Barranquilla, and Padilla. I'm a killer. I've been everywhere, man. I've been everywhere, man. Crossed the desert bare, man. I breathe the mountain air, man. I've traveled, I've had my share, man. I've been everywhere.
This is Oversight Live, your advocate for good governance. We're putting the site back in. Oversight. Here's the watcher on the wall, your host, Ben Carpenter.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Oversight Live. Thanks for joining us. Oversight Live is your road to Juneau until one can be built. Why is that necessary? Well, because in the state of Alaska, you can only get to our state capital down on the Panhandle by plane or by boat. Take a ferry. There's no road. So that presents a problem to most Alaskans, where it's cost prohibitive both in time and money to get down and watch what's happening, provide oversight of our government. Well, no road is inconvenient, but it's not a valid excuse for knowing what's going on, because most of what happens down there that's publicly available is recorded, and so we can watch it and listen to it. So that's what we're about. We're going to bring pertinent information to you so you can see what is actually happening. And if you have questions, you can chat them in your streaming app here. We're streaming on Facebook, X, and YouTube. If you just chat in the window there, I'm going to get the chat and I'll answer your questions as best I can. If you're watching the recording, you can drop me a line, producer@oversightlive.com, and I'll do my best to answer your question that way. Or if you've just got a comment, you can send it my way. I'm going to do my best to prioritize what's happening in the legislature because there's too much to cover in one day. So I'll do my best. I spent 6 years in the legislature, and I'm going to use that experience to kind of guide what I think is important and keep you informed. If you have requests, email me, producer@oversightlive.com, and I'll be sure to try to add that into the lineup here. Okay. Yeah, Craig's got it right. Craig says, let me guess. Tonight's going to be the amazing new public sector pension plan that we are donating our PFD to fund. See, I could just end the program now. You stole all my thunder, Craig. I'm kidding, Craig. That is what we're going to talk about. But I'll be completely honest with you. I am pretty disappointed in the legislature right now. I think I would probably throw up if I brought a video up. We're not going to watch a video of that right now. I've been working on this pension issue and spent many years trying to prevent the defined benefits pension from going forward. And this, my friends, and those voters on the Kenai Peninsula, northern Kenai Peninsula, you're getting what you wanted. I'm going to show you why this is absolutely the worst possible thing. If you are a taxpayer on the Kenai Peninsula, why the absolute worst possible thing to do was send Jesse Bjorkman to the Senate. But you made that decision, and that's who you want. So I'm gonna demonstrate to you tonight why that was such a poor decision. Of course, he's not the only one that's responsible. I'm gonna go down here and show you really quickly what I'm just bringing this up here. Let me make this a little bigger. Okay, so this was today. or maybe it was from yesterday. I'm not sure. I clipped the photo off my phone and added it here, but this is indicative of a number of legislators who are championing the passage of House Bill 78, the state's new defined benefit retirement system. Man, it's been a decade in the workings to try to get this thing passed. Close to a decade. There's a couple arguments that are being made collectively amongst people. The first time that I'm hearing Senator Wielkowski make an argument, not the first time that I'm hearing him make the argument, but the first time I'm hearing an argument being made that we have the worst retirement system in America. That has not been the case. You don't hear that from any of our consultants or anything. Like, there are arguments for why it needs to be improved, undoubtedly, and I've been in agreement with that. But the worst anyway, this is just exuberance and exaggeration to prove a point, and it just shows how weak your actual argument is. There are other things that we can do to improve the current retirement system. You don't have to scrap it and go to a brand new one. We'll cover that a little bit. So Wielkowski points out that House Bill 78 restores a modest pension. Well, I'm gonna explain why this is going to cost the state a lot of money, and it's going to cost you money. He says it's going to save us $100 million per year. There's no way. There is no proof. There is no proof. There is no consultant. There's no proof that a defined benefits pension system is going to help with recruiting and retention. What happens? You think that if you've got a new retirement system that somehow fixes all of the management problems that you have in state government? Most people leave employers because of their supervisor. They don't leave because they don't have a defined benefits retirement system, right? All of those other things that cause employees to be like, you know what? I'm done with state service. You want to keep them in state service and unhappy with all of the other things that go on and keep them there because they're locked in with the golden handcuffs on a defined benefit system? It's just incredible. Okay. So this is why I'm frustrated. I'm doing my best to just look at this guy's face. I want to do a quick rundown of what HB 78 does. And this is very, very high level. I'm keeping it very basic because nobody here wants to hear the specifics, okay? So House Bill 78 is sitting on the governor's desk, or it soon will be, okay? What it does is it reopens a defined benefits pension alternative for state employees, for municipal employees, for school employees who choose to participate in it. They can stay with what they've got, or they can change to this new defined pension system. Okay. Right now, everybody's got a 401k style, which is basically what you have. If you are lucky enough to have an employer-based retirement system, like a 401k, that's what all the state employees have now. All new employees have. You have some employees that are grandfathered in with the old defined benefit system that the state owes $7 billion on. But now those employees that have been in a defined contribution system, 401k style, are going to be able to opt in. They will be able to buy into this defined benefit system if they so choose, and new employees will be able to opt in. This is all if the governor allows this bill to go into law or signs it into law. If he vetoes it, then obviously this isn't going to go forward. So it returns us to a pension model for retirement system for our employees. And it's not just state employees, it is for local governments. And we're going to hit this hard. Okay. We're going to hit this hard because this is not just affecting the state budget. Okay. And that's what people are not talking about. And this is why I'm telling you, Kenai Peninsula, you made a huge mistake. Okay. If the governor allows this to go into effect, which I think he's going to, and I'll explain why, you made a huge mistake. I know the governor's not in favor of a defined benefit system, but that's not going to stop him from allowing it to go into law. So one of the arguments that the proponents of this new defined benefit system say is, well, yeah, we recognize that the old system had problems, and we're going to fix those because we're going to allow the management board, the ARM board, which is the group of people that have responsibility for managing the retirement system. We're going to allow them that if our expectations of what the retirement system is supposed to do, we're going to allow that. We're going to increase contributions. We're going to increase employer contributions, and that'll prevent any sort of problem that we have now, which is $7 billion of unfunded liabilities. So we'll just increase the employer contribution, and also that means that the employee will have to increase their contribution as well. Okay, and we're going to do that to keep this 90% funded target. Okay, so if we drop below 90%, then employees and employers, the ARM board is going to recommend, could or should recommend, that there's going to be an increase in the contributions. Okay, so that means your paycheck would be smaller, your take-home pay would be smaller because you're going to increase your contribution to your retirement system because the assumptions didn't keep. Okay, we'll talk about assumptions in a minute if I can keep my thoughts straight here. So what this does, big picture, all it does is it shifts the risk to the employer of what happens in the stock market, what happens in the investments. Currently, you and I, those of us who do not have state pensions or a pension plan, we're on a 401k plan. If the stock market goes up, our portfolio goes up and our retirement earnings go up. If the stock market goes down, well, the same thing happens. Our retirement goes down and our potential earnings, what we can draw out, go down. Okay. And the concept is that if you keep putting money in over a lifetime of working, your dollar cost averaging, and you're taking advantage of compounding interest. And even in the down years, if you buy into investments, and even in the up years, if you buy into investments, over the life of your investment, you see an increase in your portfolio. Okay, that's the theory. Okay, for everybody that's in a 401k style, if that doesn't happen, well, you're the one that has the risk. You're the one that recognizes the bad thing that happens, that you don't have as much money. Okay, that's the risk that we share as people who invest in the stock market. With a defined benefit system, the employee has no risk. Has no risk. They put their money in, they contribute to this fund, and when they retire, they get this pension, and when they die, that money goes, whatever's remaining in their pension account of what they paid in, theoretically, it goes away. It goes back to the state. It's not something that they get to keep and transfer to their kids. You retire with a 401k and you die, well, then there's money left in that 401k. It goes to you can will it to whoever I'm losing the word I'm looking for, but it's whoever's going to take over your estate when you die. So with this move to a defined benefits system, the employee no longer has any risk other than the increase in your contributions that you would have to pay for your retirement system. If the stock market goes up, great. If it goes down, great. Doesn't matter to me. I'm going to keep putting in. Maybe I have to put in a little bit more, but I just keep putting in. And when I retire, I get what I'm owed. And the reason why is because the Constitution of the state of Alaska says that your retirement system is a contract. Okay. The state cannot diminish what you are promised. So even if the stock market doesn't do what we expect it to do, even if our money managers don't do what they expect to do, the state still has to pay what you're owed through your contract, through your retirement system. That's the system that we have right now, and we have $7 billion. Let me say it a different way. We have liabilities. We have people who are owed retirement, and we are short $7 billion currently. Now, there's a plan with contributions and with investment earnings to make that up in the 2030s. Okay, but that means we have to keep having money in the budget to appropriate to the defined benefit system, so it's subject to appropriation, and we have to we have to meet our target with investment earnings. Okay, if you'll remember, and I'm just going to caveat here for just a second and say, if you remember the conversation that we just recently had with Senate Finance. And this is a conversation was repeated in the House as well. Callan comes in from the Permanent Fund Corporation and says, look, the Permanent Fund Corporation, the managers that are managing how much earnings we get each year, well, their target is 5% plus CPI. 2.5% is CPI. So that's what they're looking for is 7.5%. And they're acknowledging, this is the consultant for the Permanent Fund Corporation comes in and tells the legislature, look, we know, and history shows that the Permanent Fund Corporation is only going to make its target of CPI plus 5 less than half the time. Okay? So less than half the time, we're not making the target. The Permanent Fund Corporation is as good as it is in managing money, of managing investments. Half the time, it's not going to meet its target. Okay? So that's really important because a similar effect is going to happen in just about all of your investments within the state government, okay? Some portion of the time, you're not going to meet your target. It's just a reality of investing that you're not going to meet it. So what happens when that event occurs? Even if it's a small event, okay? We're going to talk about that. The reality is, the so what is for the employee, this is this teacher, this is the police officer, this is the person who does road grading, right? Whoever, I guess not if they're on a contract, but any public employee that's participating in the defined benefit system, they get their retirement regardless of whether investment earnings kept up with the demand or what was needed to pay that retirement. If there's a deficit, if there's a difference and there's not enough money in investment earnings, the state is on the hook to pay that. Constitutionally, the state has to pay it. So the legislature is going to, in 2030, if we haven't made up $7 billion for our unfunded liability of the current defined benefit system, when those checks come due to the retirees, the state's going to have to pay them. They pay them from whatever source of money they're going to come from. If this goes to court, the courts are going to say, look, legislature, the Constitution says you got to pay this. So you figure it out. Pay it from any source of money that you have. Oh, you got a constitutional provision that keeps you out of the permanent fund? Well, you have another constitutional provision that tells you have to pay this. So you're going to break a constitutional requirement either way. You got to figure out where to get the money. So if you got to take $1 billion out to make your pension plan solvent, and you can get that $1 billion from the permanent fund, well, it's just one investment account to another investment account. So make it happen. I mean, the court is not likely to tell the legislature how to skin the cat. They will just tell them the bill's got to be paid. You figure out where you're getting your $1 billion. It's coming out of savings. It's coming out of taxes. It's coming out of the permanent fund. Somewhere it's coming out of, because that's what the legislature would have to do. Okay. This is the level at which the pension is a guarantee. It's a guaranteed benefit to government employees in the state of Alaska. Okay. So the risk shifts to the state. And that's not just state employees. That's borough employees. That's school district employees. That risk shifts to the state. So who pays? Who pays in this? So your additional contributions, if we have a down year, let's say we're supposed to get 7% earnings and we get 6.9. Oh, so close. We almost got 7, got 6.9. Okay. Arm board says now we got to increase contributions. Who's going to have to increase contributions? Well, it's any of those employers that have employees that opted into the system. So it's the state of Alaska, it's your municipalities, it's school districts. And that contribution's based on payroll. Okay. So if the money managers at the state level don't keep up with their target necessary for this retirement fund, your budgets in each one of those employee situations, employer situations, your budgets will see an increased demand. Like you will have an increase to your budget, not to your revenue, to your expense. It will cost your budget more. Again, I say it will cost your budget more when investment earnings don't keep up with your target, don't meet your target. The other things that affect this is it's not just your investments, but it's also inflation. It's also are the employees living longer than was projected in the actuarial. Okay, so they run scientific analysis and statistic probabilities and say that people are going to live a certain number of years. Well, if 10 years later people are living longer, if 20 years later people are living longer, then the state owes more money because that person is living longer. Okay, so these are all assumptions that are baked in. We're assuming that someone's going to live till they're 85 or whatever the number is. Okay, well, that's the assumption. If the assumption is wrong and they live to 86, then there's more money required. We have no way to know whether that's going to happen or not. But statistically, this is the number we're going to go with. Well, if we're wrong, the employee isn't held at risk. If you or I with a 401k live longer than we've saved money for, the risk is on us because we're going to run out of money. We have to figure something else out, right? So the risk is on the state. All it means is that if you don't meet your assumptions built into this bill, your costs go up. Inflation, investment returns, living longer, the formulas and the levers that exist in there are even talking about what is the expected increase in pay for employees over the life of the employee. Okay, so there's a percentage or a factor of pay increase. Well, what happens if you end up paying employees more and they live longer? Well, if their retirement is based on the amount of money that their payroll is based on the amount of money that they made at the end when they're done working, then there's more money. Okay, so if that person ends up getting paid more than the factor in the bill, in the underlying retirement system, well, then your costs go up. When was the last time that we saw employees in the state or down at the local levels get paid less than they did? When did we ever see payroll go down? No, it doesn't ever go down. It always goes up. And so there's always pressure through union contracts to increase pay for state employees. Well, if that rate of increase is greater than the assumption baked into the retirement system, then your costs go up. So the thing that the legislature should be asking, and not only the legislature, but school boards and borough assemblies, every time a union comes in and is demanding a pay increase, the first question should be, well, what's the retirement system factor for employee pay growth? And we should never, ever agree to raise pay more than that factor, because that will end up breaking the system. We'll end up costing ourselves more money, because if you're adding cost to the system and the arm board comes back and says, oh, hey, we're projections are we're going to be unfunded, so now we have to increase our contributions. Well, now your budget just went up twice. Not only do you have to pay your employees more, but now you got to add more in for compensation for the retirement system. because that's baked into this bill. If you drop below the 90%, employers got to contribute more. So what happens when the state runs out of money? I'm kidding. Maybe we'll run off a fiscal cliff. I mean, eventually, yes, if we don't fix things. The point that I'm trying to get at, what if the legislature just, for some reason, chooses not to appropriate money for your contribution increase? It's a really tough budget year. We'll get that contribution next year. Is the courts going to meet and direct the legislature to do something in a timely manner to make that happen? So that here's the problem, is that if you don't do the contribution, if you don't add in the money now, then you don't have the ability for that money to compound interest over time. So just a year's worth of money not going into the account has an impact in the future earnings of that fund. Okay, so just a small amount now can have a large impact later because of dollar cost averaging, because of compounding interest. Okay, because this is the investment world. So this is another reason why they say, look, if you start out when you're young and you just put $50 away, you'll be a millionaire by the time you hit retirement, or some figure, right? It's the slow and steady putting money away and allowing your money to grow and compound over time, right? This is the risk that you have with the legislature now coming up to a budget conversation that says, you know what? What do we do? Do we agree to the pay increases that the employees want, or do we add contributions to the legislature didn't have a say in the contract negotiations down at the school district. So we're going to have to say yes to the union contract that increases teacher compensation, right? Increases costs for education. And then the legislature has to make a decision as to whether they can fully fund that contribution that's necessary for the arm board, for the employer contribution, right? So that the risk is that the legislature at some point in time doesn't put into the fund. Well, then that just increases your liability at the end. Very easy for the legislature to just say, oh, we'll make that up later. We'll get you next year. I mean, look at what happened with obligations such as oil tax credits. The legislature said, oh, we didn't have enough money. We're not going to pay those taxes. Those are legal obligations the state had to pay private enterprise. Private companies were owed money by the state, and the legislature just chose not to appropriate the money. They eventually did, years down the road. So it's not out of the realm of a possibility that the legislature would not appropriate money for this particular instance, especially if they could just make an argument that we'll get it next year. Well, that's the thing, is you can't just pick it up next year. You've missed that time, that entire time of compounding interest. So not having the money put in now has an effect later. Whether it's an employer contribution or an employee contribution, it has an impact later, and it's actually a large impact, as we're going to see. So what do higher costs? Remember, all we got to have is one or more of our assumptions not work out the way we wanted, and then we have higher costs. So what does that mean at the state level? What does that mean at the borough? What does it mean at the school district level? Well, it means that the costs for this retirement system are going to compete with other things that are going to be in the budget. At the school level, it's going to compete with how many kids are in the classroom, because we'll be able to hire less teachers because now we have higher costs in contributions, employer contributions for retirement systems. That's what it's going to mean. You don't have that risk right now with a 401k style. It is just a percentage of the employee's pay goes into the retirement system. It is easy to figure. It is easy to plan for into the future because it is just math. The defined benefit system is not just math. It's what happens out in the real world, in the investment world. Yeah, it comes back in ones and zeros and numbers, but it is risk. So ultimately what that means for the state budget, assuming that we still have a PFD, is it puts downward pressure on the size of the dividend, because that's where you're not going to raise taxes. Who's going to allow taxes to be raised to pay for increased pension obligations? Republicans, are you going to do that? Hell no, you're not going to do that. You're going to support raising taxes on oil companies? No, you're not. You're going to take the easy button. You're going to press the easy button and reduce the dividend. So that's what this means. When the state pension plan does not meet its investment earnings, and it will fail to meet its investment earnings 1 year. That puts pressure on your dividend. If your dividend's already gone, then it puts pressure on either spending for something else, or you got to raise taxes. I mean, there's only so many things you can do when the Constitution says you have to do this and keep up with the retirement system. So this whole conversation about adding contributions, increasing employer contributions, right? It's like, we're going to avoid the debt snowball. We're going to avoid the unfunded liability. We're going to be able to avoid that future cost to state government by just requiring employers to pay more. Well, great. Okay, so the state doesn't have a giant unfunded liability to pay. It's just employers have to pay more, and employees, but employers have to pay more. Okay, well, who's the employer? Oh, well, for state employees, it's the state. So it doesn't matter. The conversation is who pays and when. Do you pay now, which I think is the morally right thing to do? Do you pay now or do you pay later? Either way, the people who are pushing the defined benefit system, either way, the state's paying more. What do they care whether it's now or later? The state's going to pay it either way. They have to. So this is a system that we're creating that's going to increase costs, not through legislative action or inaction, but by failure to meet assumptions. People live longer, pay raises are greater, investment earnings don't meet where we need them, inflation is greater than we thought it would be, or all of the above. That's why the system's going to grow, because those are the things that you're not going to adequately be able to manage them. So what is the actual impact? Okay. Let's take a look at what happens. And I forget which, okay. So I very quickly ginned this up. Okay. So let me talk you through here. What happens when you have a 0.1% miss in investment returns? So you thought you were going to get 7%. That's our target. We're going to get 7. You could say 6. We thought we were going to be really conservative and only get 6, but we didn't get 6. We got 5.9. Just so happens we're usually using the number 7. 7 is your target. Okay. So instead of giving 7% return, we got 6.9% return just once. What happens? Well, that means higher contributions, higher costs going forward because you didn't meet your needs. So you're looking at about a 2% increase in employer pension contributions over this next time period. Okay. Well, that's if 1 year you missed your target by 0.1%. The number grows. If you miss your target, instead of getting 6.9, you got 6.8. Well, the number then grows. If you did that 2 years in a row, then the number grows again, and it compounds into the future because that's fewer dollars that are getting invested over time. Okay. So this is a real simple chart to show what happens when you have just a 0.1% one-time reduction in your, or a miss in your investment returns. Okay. So you're roughly looking at, for the state, you're looking at within 5 years, a $15 to $16 million additional cost just because your investment earnings didn't hit your target. Over 20 years is $62 million. That's just one time, 1 year, not meeting your investment goal. Oh, it's only $60 million. Okay. Well, if it was 6.8 instead of 6.9, then it's more than $60 million. You can see where I'm going with this, right? If you sometime in the future, you went 6.9 and inflation was higher, right? You can see how the assumptions have to match going forward in order for the system to work and not have additional cost into the future. Okay. Here's the Kenai Peninsula Borough for you local folks, since I'm down here. And this is not the borough, this is a school district. Okay. So we're looking at roughly $100 million in payroll costs. Okay. That's the estimated cost that I'm using for this. If the state's managers don't get 7% and they get 6.9, it means that within 5 years, you've got $500,000 that you're going to have to increase your budget for payroll or for retirement. Okay, that's going forward because that money isn't going to be there for the investment. This is the increase in contributions that you're going to have to pay. Cumulative over the next 20 years, you're up to $2.5 million, almost $2.5 million. It's not through a decision that your legislature or your school board made, or it's not through any sort of decision that was made. It was because you didn't get the investment earnings that you thought that were your target, that your retirement system is meant, excuse me, your retirement system, the assumptions that are baked into the retirement system. This is what has happened in other states, that your pensions become a higher priority than other things in the budget. And Rick is hitting the nail on the head. Pensions can become higher priority than roads, education, or dividend. It's not because we want to, it's because we have to. The state constitution and the courts are going to say, this is your highest priority. The Constitution says that retirement systems shall never be diminished. So you don't have a challenge. Your challenge isn't paying for roads. Your challenge is not for paying for pensions. That must be paid. Roads, you can drive on bumpy roads. You don't have to spend on roads. You do have to spend on pensions. So what does this mean? You go back to comments like this. What this means is that when your government is completely funded by your permanent fund earnings, that's where we're headed. If we're not willing to reduce spending or raise taxes or do a combination of that, we're going to see the dividend dry up and all of the permanent fund earnings will be going towards government. So it means that the only way that you will benefit from permanent fund earnings is through some sort of state service. Unless you're a state employee, a borough employee, or a school district employee who is chosen to be in this defined benefit system, and then your retirement will be coming from the permanent fund earnings. You will have a comfortable retirement. All of the private sector Alaskans will have no benefit from the permanent fund earnings, no individual benefit other than what they drive on the roads, they have police services, they whatever it is, however they interact with the government. That's the only benefit they get. But the state employee, your teachers, they will all personally benefit from the permanent fund earnings because it is now directly tied to their retirement system. Now, you want to pay taxes? You could make an argument that says, well, your corporate income taxes are paying this too because it's a general fund obligation. The pension obligation is a general fund obligation. It's not directly tied to the permanent fund earnings, to the earnings reserve account. You just have to ask, where is the majority of the money coming from for state budgets? Well, it's coming from the permanent fund earnings because there's fewer dollars coming from corporate income tax or from taxes and royalties from oil production. So this is the system. This is the system that people like Senator Wielechowski, are putting in place now to take care of not you and I. We're not being taken care of. We're literally saying you're just going to have to give up your dividend to pay pensions for government employees. Oh, you don't want that? Well, then we'll put an income tax in place. How about that? How about you get your dividend? We'll give you $1,000, and then we'll take $1,200 in income tax. We'll take $1,000 in income tax, whatever. That what you want? That's what's going to happen. The writing is on the wall. The writing's on the wall. You don't have a way to stop it. If you don't send somebody to the legislature who is willing to cut spending, reduce spending, and I'm arguing that is entirely possible if you would just manage government better. If you don't send a governor there that's interested in better management of state government, if you don't send somebody that's willing to stand up to poor union decisions, public union decisions, then your only option is to allow the permanent fund dividend to go away and pay taxes later. Because this system is going to cost you more. It's going to cost you more. And that's at the state level. At the local level, when your local contribution goes up for your teachers' retirement system, when your local contribution, your employer contribution goes up, that means the local school district has to pay more. What does it mean within 5 years, you would have a $500,000 increase in employer costs, pension costs. Oh, and by the way, healthcare is tied into this. You see an increase in healthcare costs, that if it's greater than your your assumptions in your formula, then your costs go up. So what does that mean for you? What does it mean for the people who elected Jesse Bjorkman? It means that your local taxes are going to go up. The state budget's not going to cover your local contribution at the school district. They're not going to cover the cost at your borough. It means your property taxes are going to go up. Every time you have a increase in teacher pay, every time your unions negotiate a pay increase that is greater than what the formula is within the pension system for increase in pay, every time that happens, it means in the future you're going to be paying more in property taxes to cover that employer contribution. That's what it means. Rick says, I'm reading from the internet as you go. Broader fiscal pain, cut the dividends, education infrastructure, potential credit downgrades, raising borrowing costs, pressure to introduce new taxes. Yeah, it's all of the above, or pick your negative, right? Pick which one do you want to do. All this does is it shifts the burden. You take a step back, and all it does is shift the burden at the state level to the earnings reserve account. Now you can understand, maybe I hope you can understand why some of these people want to see the earnings reserve account moved into the corpus of the fund and allow the corpus to pay for state government. Because then it would be the same thing as what you've got going on with your pension. Remember, your retiree doesn't, on a pension plan, your retiree is held harmless with what happens with the stock market. Okay? That's the thinking. I'm the state employee. I get my pension, and it doesn't matter what happens in the stock market. Okay? Well, rolling the earnings reserve account into the corpus and then allowing the state to spend from the corpus means that in those times, those 50% of the time where you're not meeting your target investment plus inflation, when you're not meeting that, you're drawing from the corpus of the fund in order to pay your draw, your POMV, because you didn't earn enough to do it, to draw from it. So you're going to draw from your corpus. It's the same thing. Your employee is going to draw from state government, not the investments that they had invested, because there wasn't enough invested to meet their needs for their retirement check. So the state has to come up with the alternative, or the deficit. This is the same thinking. It's the people who are promoting government, who are wanting to make sure that government is taken care of. They want to make sure that government gets their money just like the pensioner gets their money. We're going to allow the permanent fund to pay for state government and pay for pensions, regardless of whether we earn the money that year or not. And what does this do over time? If you are drawing down your fund in a year where you don't have earnings that meet your target and you have high inflation, then you're reducing the earning power of that money going forward. So you're basically saying the permanent fund earnings, the corpus, is here to benefit this generation more than it is future generations, because we're willing to reduce what the future generation has to work with to ensure there's a payment going out this year, this generation. It's the same mindset. And you can thank Republicans, Jesse Bjorkman, Senator Stevens, Senator Giesel. Bert Stedman voted against it. He doesn't want a defined benefit. I'm forgetting another Republican. In the House, Chuck Kopp, Louise Stutz. These are Republicans. This thing doesn't get passed without them. There aren't enough Democrat votes to get this thing through. These Republicans, so-called conservatives, they're the ones that enabled this to happen. The good news is it appears that you're not going to have enough votes that passed just along party lines. I say party lines, with the exception of the Republicans that joined the Democrats, right? Got to put labels because people need to understand, right? There aren't enough votes to override the governor's veto. So how bad do you want a pension? They've been fighting for it for years. How bad does Senator Giesa want a pension? How bad does Senator Wielechowski want a pension? Seems like pretty bad. Are they willing to hold up a pipeline bill until the governor signs this one? I guarantee you that's the conversation happening behind the scenes right now. Do you think this election bill means anything? The election bill means nothing compared to this. These are two of the largest, biggest, longest reaching, impactful decisions that we have facing the state legislature and our leaders right now. The pension and the pipeline. The governor now has the pension bill sitting on his desk, and he wants the legislature to pass his pipeline bill, tax bill. You can bank on it that the conversation is happening that says, hey, if you veto that pension bill, you can say goodbye to your pipeline bill. It's never going to get built anyway. We'll just leave it with the tax structure that we have now. We're looking out for the best interests of the public here, right? You didn't want to save us $100 million a year on establishing a pension. It's a complete lie. It's a complete lie. There's no credible evidence that they're going to save money. You know how they say they're going to save that is because people are not going to leave, and then they have to spend more money in hiring new people. There's no evidence. There's no evidence that a defined benefits bill, a pension, is going to affect recruiting and retention. Matter of fact, I'd even go out on the limb and say, you know who wants the defined benefits bill? The pension is the unions. The unions really want this. Okay. Well, who's in charge of manpower and work stoppages and making work miserable or making it run smoothly? Who's in charge of all of the personnel in a union shop? Well, the union is. So why in the world would we really care about fixing recruiting and retention now before we have a defined benefits bill? Once we have a pension system, once we get what we want, well, then maybe we can, make sure things run a little smoothly and there's less pain in the office. You don't think that's possible? There's no evidence that recruiting and retention improves because you bring a pension forward. But that's the narrative. Governor, you don't want to see recruiting and retention improve? You don't want to save $100 million? You don't want to say yes to all these teachers? They've got the worst retirement system in the nation. You don't want to give them the best retirement system? Oh no, it's not even the best. What did Wielechowski say? It's a modest. You don't want to give them just a modest pension. It's not even the best pension in the nation. It's just a modest pension, and you can't say yes to that. Well, Governor, it's going to be hard for us to back you in reducing the amount of revenue that we're going to get from this pipeline. We can't, we have a constitutional responsibility to maximize the benefit of this gas pipeline to Alaskans. We can't pass your bill. You're just wrong on this. Now, of course, if we could come to some agreement, maybe we could compromise on this. We'll get a little. We'll just modify your bill just a little bit if you'll just pass this defined benefits bill. Kevin, thanks for showing up. Kevin says, in fact, there's ICER evidence. That's state of Alaska's university system evidence from just a few months ago that says directly the opposite. Defined benefits will do zip to increase retention. Yeah. I'm glad I'm not the only one. Obviously, anybody who's paying attention can see this. The Republican establishment made this election bill something it was not. They are responsible for the kerfluffle. So my guess is that there's a quid pro quo going to happen. You'll never know it, but that's what'll happen. It's the defined benefits bill for the gas line bill. Private sector gets its bill. Government gets its bill. It's the way things are done in the state. It's absolutely disgusting. It's the reason why I can't bring a committee meeting to you tonight. I am absolutely disgusted, disappointed, disgusted with this legislature. These people, you don't know any different. You don't know any different. You're going through your day and your job and raising your family, and you don't know the difference between a defined contribution and a defined benefit. You don't know any of this difference. When they come out and say, oh, this is going to save $100 million, they got a big smile on their face. They're like super confident. They know what they're talking about. You're like, oh, well, it must be true. They're lying to you. There's no evidence, no proof that that's going to happen. All of the evidence points to you're never going to make all of your assumptions. We have no further to look to than our current defined benefit system that is $7 billion in the red. But you've got a class of people in Alaska who feel entitled to a pension. This isn't supported by taxes, not your taxes. If it's supported by taxes, it's oil taxes and royalties and corporate income tax. This isn't supported by taxes. It's supported by permanent fund. So what the hell do you care? If you're wealthy in this state, what do you care? Your dividend goes away. What do you care whether there's a pension problem? As long as this thing gets paid and it's coming from somewhere else and you don't have to pay it, what do you care? Well, it's just the people who aren't wealthy. They're the ones that get hit. Right smack in the face. Not only do they not get a dividend, a $1,000 dividend, not only do they not get that, they don't get a $3,800 dividend. They certainly aren't going to get that. They don't get the pension. How many people are working in the state of Alaska who have no 401k? All they're going to rely upon is this shitty Social Security. Now, you might make the argument that that's their responsibility. They can manage their money how they're supposed to, and they could be investing their money just like everybody else could. You're absolutely right. It just makes it a little bit harder when you're on a fixed income and not making a whole lot to justify investing. Yeah, Rick, I get it. Breathe. This is, I get the same feeling that I get. I need to get rid of his face because I'm really frustrated by looking at him. I get the same feeling I did in high school when that bully steps forward and is bullying one of my friends. It's what the feeling I get, because this is the way in which the messaging and the way in which that they're pushing this through is in a dishonest way. Chuck Kopp is completely dishonest. He has been pushing this and finding whatever lever and whatever mechanism that this will find enough support to move forward. There's absolutely no way that this isn't going to cost the state more going forward. It is a completely dishonest conversation that says this is going to save us money. Never going to happen. Matter of fact, it's going to cost you more money. It's going to cost you property tax. That's what it's going to cost you. When the stock market goes down, employer contributions go up. And that means your tax liability goes up. Plain and simple. Your PFD goes away and your property tax at the local level goes up because your teacher's pension is connected to your property tax. All those public employees that send their champion there, they're getting exactly what they want. The rest of you, because largely all you conservatives, all you hardworking conservatives, you don't show up to vote. This is what you get. Your property taxes are going up. There's no alternative. I'm telling you, there's no alternative. As soon as the stock market doesn't perform the way that we need it to perform, our investments do not perform the way we need it to perform, your property taxes will go up because there will be an additional employer contribution. I don't know how else to say this. This is what they're putting forward right now. It's on the governor's desk. He can veto it and they don't have the votes to override the veto. My guess. But the governor is not going to get his pipeline bill if he vetoes this. Yeah, they're going to hold the pipeline up for their defined benefits bill. 100% every day. The government and the government worker could care less about whether you have low-cost gas. Could care less. Their paychecks are they're coming. They're coming from the government. They're not going to get fired. Economy goes down, they're still going to get paid. The economy goes down, there's no connection. Their pay is coming from the permanent fund earnings. I don't care. Pipeline, schmipeline. Yeah, Southeast Alaska voters, they don't care. Pipeline doesn't matter to them. Western Alaska, pipeline doesn't matter to them. Give me a government pension, I'll give you a pipeline. Rick says, but a member of the Mat-Su Assembly is trying hard to get rid of property taxes in place of sales taxes. Well, it doesn't matter, Rick. Whatever's tied to education spending, whether it's funded by property tax or funded by sales tax, it's going up. This is the point that I'm trying to make. When the proponent of the defined benefit says, well, we'll just make the employer contribution go up in order to keep that pension liability in check. So we don't want to go into debt. Going into debt's bad. So we'll just make the employer pay just a little bit more. And everybody's like, oh, okay, yeah. Oh, wait a second. Who's the employer? Oh, it's not the state. We're talking about a pension here. We're talking about a state pension. The assumption is it's a state. No, it's whatever taxing structure at the local level is paying for education. They're the employer. So whether it's a property tax or a sales tax, you got to raise more of it because you're going to have to spend more. You don't have a choice. Employer contribution goes up, you're spending more. No choice in the matter. But it's a borough tax, not a state. Yeah, Rick, that's what I'm saying. And we may be saying the same thing here, but this is, I'm going to repeat myself. The pension plan is a state pension. But the state pension requires employers to chip into the state pension plan. Okay, so who are the employers? It isn't ConocoPhillips. It isn't Walmart. It isn't any private business. The only employers that they're talking about are school districts, boroughs, cities, well, maybe not cities, boroughs, whoever has an employee that is participating in the state pension plan authorized by statute. Whoever that is, that employer will have no alternative but to increase their employer contributions when investments don't materialize. That means taxes, increase in taxes, or cuts somewhere. You do the math. Of course, you could always grow your economy at the local level, but that's it. That's where we're at. You want to say it's for the teachers? Okay, fine. It's for the teachers. We could have fixed this. It would have cost us money, but we could have fixed this without a defined benefits plan, without forcing us to go in and spend more money every year because investments are bad. You could have just fixed the defined contributions plan, retirement plan that we currently have, and allow teachers to participate in it. There's two parts to our defined contributions plan. One of them is the 401k, and there's an annuity portion. The teachers can't participate in the annuity portion right now. That's why Wilikowski's got a leg to stand on when he says the teachers' retirement system's not good. He's right. It's not good. Teachers also don't pay into Social Security. So they're getting doubly screwed. So all you do is allow them to participate in either of them, and you fix the problem. Does it increase costs? Yeah, increases costs now. But if the stock market goes down, that doesn't increase your costs. Now the stock market goes down, your costs go up. Gary says, in reality, we pay taxes to the schools 3 times: federal taxes, PFD taxes, and then property taxes. Yes. Federal taxes are a small portion of education spending. Most of the money is coming from state money and property tax or local money. There is a small amount of federal money that's coming in, but you're absolutely right. Federal money is through federal income tax. It's also through debt. A quarter of all of the federal dollars that we receive come from debt because we have an unbalanced federal budget, right? So it's not just our taxes, it's future generations' taxes, future taxpayers who are going to have to pay that debt back somehow. They're the ones that are funding a small portion of our education system. Yeah, Rick, I think that's what it is. It's both or nothing. Yeah, and I mean, this is, how dare you? How is this not bullying? This is what I'm saying. The unions, the union faithful, the union bosses, however you want to put it, that are pushing hard to get a pension again, to get their grubby little mitts into the permanent fund earnings before it's gone. They're going to hold this pipeline up until they get their pension. I guarantee it. Guarantee it. Well, that's the thing, Christopher. It's not meant that way. You're supposed to not retire. I'm kidding. Retire on Social Security and let somebody else pay for it. Yeah. There's no comparison happening during this pension conversation between public and private sector. It's not important to the conversation in Juneau what Alaskans comparably have for retirement in the private sector. It's irrelevant to their conversation. It's just whatever we can get the legislature to agree to. Anyway, majorly disgusted with what I have seen happen in the legislature today. Kevin says earlier tonight, he says, Will Stapp was on fire on the floor today. And he's exactly right. We're not saving the state anything. We're just moving money around to make us look smart. This is the thing that I'm beside myself, because anybody with a brain that knows anything about pensions and the financing of the state at the local level, the school district is having a hard time finding money now. This only increases their costs. But I guess it's okay if you don't have a dividend, right? We'll make sure that our public sector employees are taken care of. We'll make sure that those people that we hire to do the things for government, they will have a sweet retirement. Those of us who are not in government service, those of us who work in the private sector, will just, that's the trade-off that you make, right? You gotta live peacefully in this state, in this nation. So we're just going to trade our dividend to make sure that state employees, borough employees, and school district employees have a cush retirement. That's the most important thing that we could be doing with our PFD money, with our taxes when they come, is to make sure that those others are taken care of. Of course, they're willing to hold a pipeline up, which means low cost energy for you and I. They're willing to hold that up in order to get what they want. It's a sad situation, sad state where we're in right now. I would, I don't even know if I can argue to call the governor and tell him to veto it. I don't know that I can do that. I am supremely confident that this pension bill is tied to a gas line tax bill. I'm really, really confident. Chuck Kopp, Kathy Giesel, they want this pension bill bad. Senator Bjorkman, it's the only reason he came to the legislature. Get teachers a pension. It's the reason he exists in the legislature. We need a pipeline. And if the legislative action is the only thing that's standing in the way right now, I can't in good conscience say we'll do something that's going to jeopardize the pipeline. It'd be really helpful if Glenfarne would come forward and say, you know what, it doesn't really matter what the legislature does. We're going to build a pipeline anyway. Don't care. Pass the pipeline tax bill or not. You know what happens? If you don't pass the pipeline bill, all the effect is you pay higher cost gas. We'll go ahead and build the pipeline. Just means there'll be higher cost gas for everyone. The sooner they can come out with that message, the easier it would be for all of us to say, okay, so we're gonna have to say yes to a defined benefits bill and have high cost gas, or we say no to a defined benefits bill and have high cost gas. Okay, well then what are we gonna do? We're gonna say no to the bill and take high cost gas, because otherwise we're gonna pay higher cost property taxes too. If gas prices are going up either way, why do we care? Veto the bill. It'd be really helpful for Glenfarne to come out and say that. Look, it doesn't matter what the legislature does. We'll build the pipeline under the current law. If they can't build it under the current law, then I guess they get themselves a defined benefits bill. This is politics. Gotta love it, huh? All right. I'm going to call it a night. Thanks for joining. I hope this was helpful. I know I don't feel good about what I'm seeing. I'm not proud of our state. I mean, this is fiscal irresponsibility on display. But I don't know. I've come to expect that from our legislature. If only there were more private sector people participating down in Juneau, that would be helpful. All right. I hope you have a good evening, rest of your evening. I will see you tomorrow night, and we should know whether the governor is going to veto the bill that's revising the elections. He has until tomorrow, so I think that's probably close of business, or maybe it's midnight tomorrow. I don't know, but he has until tomorrow to veto it. And if he doesn't veto it, he can allow it to go into place. And there seems to be a lot of brouhaha about whether he's going to do that or not. Just so happens that is a Wielechowski bill, and Wielechowski is sitting next to Giesel in the Senate Resources. So what do you bet? What do you think the bully can do? Can the bully say, I want an election bill and I want a pension bill, and you're going to give me both of them if you want a gas line bill? I don't know. We'll see. It's politics. Everyone have a good night. We'll see you tomorrow.